Rogers TV. The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers Cable or Rogers TV.
Hi, and welcome to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. My guest today is Mayor Sue Carleton of Georgian Bluffs and Samantha Buchanan, who is the treasurer of Georgian Bluffs. She's the money person of Georgian Bluffs. Is it okay to talk about money? I hope so, because we're going to talk about the budget. Anyway, welcome to both of you to Politically Speaking. Now, I got to ask you, what's the snow like in Georgian Bluffs out there on the bypass today?
I'll let Sam answer what it's like out there.
That's right, because Sam's the only one who's on the bypass. You're
right.
sitting on
She's
Highway
in the
6
office.
at home. Yeah.
No, it's rather snowy, that's for sure. But today it seems to be a little bit lighter in the snow. So hopefully our crews, and not only just in our municipality, but all municipalities locally, they're able to tackle some of the accumulation that we've seen over the last few days.
Mm-hmm. I was reading somewhere where I think there have been 17 snow days at least already for the school systems.
I would mention about the snow. If people have questions about what's going on, there are updates on the website all the time, or go on to the Municipal 511. That can get them extra information on what's happening, as close to update as staff can make sure that that's happening. But that'll give them all the information. And just to know that the crew are doing an amazing job, because they are out there every minute that they can be until they have maxed out their times every day. And it's difficult when the road's blowing in as quickly behind them as they can get it cleared. So they're working very hard and trying to keep everybody safe. Indeed.
And there are different standards for different roads across the municipality.
Yes.
What you see on, for example, on Highway 6 or Highway 21 is not what you're going to find on a concession.
No, we have a lower minimum maintenance standard that we need to adhere to. So I happen to live on a provincial highway, so I watch that plow going past here continuously. The county roads are a higher level. And I think for a lot of people out in the rural areas, it's understanding that if they're off that county road, our plows in the municipality aren't going out as often as even the counties are.
Right. That's right. And you've declared a significant weather event, I think, if you and several other municipalities.
Yes, and I think the county called one Monday.
Mm-hmm.
I think pretty much everybody had called a significant weather event then. And that's really just, it's not that we're pulling the plows. Some people think that's what it is. We're just advising people we're having a hard time keeping up. So don't expect the normal level of service out there. That the guys are still working as long as they can, but we cannot maintain that standard. A bright sunny day, we can get everything cleaned up. But when the wind keeps blowing, we can't.
And not only that, you can lay down sand, lay down salt, do those things, because intersections can be very dangerous.
Yes.
If I can,
not only that, the other big risk, not just for regular cars, are transports. There have been a number of transports. Even there was at least one snowplow in Grey County that got ditched. Over here by Owen Sound, and then I see that they've had plows ditched over in Bruce County, because they're getting it a lot worse than we are.
If I can just build on Mayor Carleton's point, also declaring a significant weather event allows us the opportunity to seek additional support outside of the municipality to address some of those significant related weather events we may be encountering, such as moving snow or anything, given any kind of event, that we can engage some additional resources to address it.
What would that look like, Samantha? What additional resources could you call on?
For winter, there aren't as many. We were seeking out some third-party contractors to remove snow from some areas that have had seen too much buildup, that because of how quickly it accumulated, there's nowhere else to put the snow. So it was looking to truck it out. But depending on the nature of the emergency, we can also escalate different matters to the province or federal if needed through the PEOC.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's the aid, what used to be called aid to a civil power, but we're not in that stage yet.
No, not there.
In other words, this isn't you, Sue. You were not Mel Lastman. You're not going to call out the army.
No. CBC phoned me a couple of weeks ago on a Sunday evening asking for a story on how we were dealing with all the snow in Grey and Bruce. And I thought afterwards, maybe I shouldn't have said, it's Grey and Bruce counties, it's winter. We deal with it.
Yeah.
And to me, there wasn't a story, and I don't think they ran with anything then, but.
Well, you could always have said, well, excuse me, I got to shut down my snowmobile.
Yeah.
Because in fact, was talking to a couple of people who are snowmobile enthusiasts. They love this weather. They just love it.
Oh, yes. I have a grandson that's just in heaven right now. So,
yeah. So there are people for whom this is maybe a hardship, but there's also people for whom this is a great joy.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, the other thing is that has there been many hydro outlets hydro outages across Georgian Bluffs at all that you're aware of?
There were some on Side Road 15 last night commenting that they were out, but it wasn't the whole side road. So I don't know what was maybe causing that. And I didn't hear anything further. I haven't heard anything really beyond that comment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you mention about this being the perfect thing for some people, one of the events coming up is our free ski days out at Whispering Pines, the trail out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's coming up this Sunday. So for a change, people are actually going to be able to go and make use of those trails.
And I know it's not Georgian Bluffs, but the Wyerton Willie Fest comes up this weekend.
Yes, that's this weekend, yes.
So we'll have to figure out what Wyerton Willie's going to say. I remember a church sign in Sound a few years ago, pray for Wyerton Willie, but I wasn't sure whether it was to save his skin or hope for an early spring. But
all
that's not
the weather.
That'll be Jay Kirkland's job, not yours.
That's right. That's Jay's. Yes.
All right. Well, enough of snow. I think we've all had enough of snow. Samantha, the budget, that's your responsibility. Can you give us an overview of what the 2025 budget will look like, or will look like because you adopted it?
So Georgian Bluffs, we've kind of had a record where this is the earliest adoption for our annual budget that we've seen in ever that I'm aware of, but I stand to be corrected on that. We were able to pass it. We are envisioning a combined, I believe it is 4.11% municipal tax rate increase. That is subject to change, depending, being a lower tier of the county. If the tax ratios drastically change, then that would adjust that. But we are looking at a levy increase. So the tax revenue is increasing by 6.11%. A large driving factor around that was some of the projects we're looking to do. We're also looking to invest more into our reserves for large projects in the future around our roads, our bridges, and making that foresight planning towards those investments. We're also going to be looking at increasing our gravel maintenance budget each year to try and ensure that what used to be a road saw it being re-graveled and graded once every 5 years to changing it to be once every 3 to keep on top of that operations around it. So
don't tell me you're actually going to address potholes.
Try to.
Try to is the key words.
Well, yeah, I'm sure there'll be citizens of Georgian Bluffs who will be very pleased to see that.
Yes. No, it's it was a good budget process, I feel, and I hope members of council and the public agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I do. This has been the best process we've done as council, with staff kind of leading and guiding us. Over the past years, I think some of us in council didn't feel we got as much information. And this year, we definitely felt we had the information. It was presented well, and we really appreciate staff doing that, in particular Samantha, because she leads that process.
Mm-hmm. Well, hey, Samantha, that looks awfully good. That looks awfully good, because I know that if there is an issue that people get upset about, it's the municipal tax rate, because of course it's the closest level of government to the people. So if the mayor says it was a good process, it was a good process. And we have to remember too that I believe some of that process is mandated by the province, isn't it? It's you have to do it in a certain way under the Municipal Act.
I don't believe they mandate how we do it. They just mandate that we must do a budget,
Well,
and the budget
public
must
meetings and
come to
that kind
zero.
of thing.
So we can't budget to have a surplus or a deficit, whereas some other levels of government can budget for a deficit.
Mm-hmm. So you don't have the revenue tools of other levels of government.
Not
No,
to the
we
same
definitely
extent.
don't.
A majority of our revenue is unfortunately the tax levy, that I think we're looking at 13.7 million for tax revenue, and overall revenue is other sources of revenue, whether it's grant, user fees, it's about 4.5 million for us each year.
Sure. And just out of curiosity, because often one of the things that gets people wound up is comparisons. Is Georgian Bluffs in a comparative compared to most rural municipalities? Is it in a good spot?
You're right that that's a hard one to answer. So every municipality provides services that may be slightly different from others, or provided in a different way than others. That, yes, Georgian Bluffs historically does have one of the lowest tax rates, but we also have our services provided in different ways. When we look at library, there are other municipalities that have a library within their limits, whereas we have a partnership with Owen Sound for the North Grey Library. So it's a different way that we're providing the service that has different cost implications than if we were to construct a library in Georgian Bluffs.
And the same is true of public services like police, fire. Those are, one is OPP, one is shared with me through Intertownship. So when you start to get into some of the intricacies of the actual details, it really does, it makes your head spin.
Mm-hmm.
It really does.
Well, and I think one of the things that I hesitate there on comparing ourselves to others is we are not identical to everybody else. So to compare ourselves to Owen Sound and say, well, we've got a lower tax rate, we have different things that we need to offer our residents. And so it's not a fair comparison, I think, to make. People have to adjust to what's the level of service you're going to get when you live out one of the concession roads here as compared to living in Owen Sound.
And water is another good example, although it's not a budget, this budget issue. You have several small drinking water systems. Owen Sound has one large drinking water system, apples and oranges.
Exactly. And drinking water systems are financed only by the users of the system, not by everybody in the municipality. And that's sometimes something we have to remind the residents of. They're not paying for a system they're not on.
Right. And I just sort of as an aside, I noticed some mention recently at Owen Sound Council of the sharing of water systems that is going to go on with Georgian Bluffs. So extensions and those kinds of things, which are good to see.
It is. It's good to work with their neighbors on that. And that, especially as it relates to the Potawatomi water system for us, That's been an issue for years. It was a big election issue in the last election. So it's nice to finally be able to work together with Owen Sound, and hopefully we come up with something that works well for them, that works well for us, and then we move it on to other areas. I mean, we're working with them already in the building department. Through the county, we're looking at a planning model that would encompass everyone who wishes to be part of it.
Yeah, yeah, that's there are cooperations that are happening right across in many services. So, and sometimes it even takes the form of police cooperation. Not to, well, the OPP have been involved in several cases here in Owen Sound, but I'm sure that they support each other as well. So.
I would think so. And OPP has undergone a change where each of us as a municipality used to have our own OPP board, whereas now the OPP board encompasses 16 municipalities. So it's everywhere that OPP covers in Grey and Bruce, with the exception of those like West Grey, Hanover, and Owen Sound, who have their own police forces.
Oh, Saugeen Shores. And Saugeen Shores.
Right. Yes, you're right. Sorry, I forget about them. Mm-hmm. So that new model of that new larger board, where I think the advantage there is, instead of us dealing directly with the commander and asking questions, now you've got other people. You can say, we're having this problem in our municipality. Has anybody else had that? We can reach out to others. So instead of being in our own little silo with the OPP, we've now got a greater reach and more access to other people's solutions.
Yeah. So it's a changing landscape, but in many ways it's changing for the better.
I hope so.
Yeah. Now, one of the other things that is an ongoing issue in all of our municipalities is infrastructure and aging infrastructure, and the infrastructure gap that is continually referred to. And I promise we're not going to talk provincial politics here, because you have set aside X number of dollars for infrastructure reserves. Do you?
Yes. So each year, as part of our budget, we do put money into our reserves to address some of those future infrastructure needs. I think it was around a $2 million mark, slightly above a $2 million mark. For 2025's budget. And related to an infrastructure gap, staff are working still with our consultants to get our updated asset management plan, and we hope to have that presented to council in February so they can better understand what our gap looks like. Based on what I've seen, we are comparable to other municipalities with what we're projecting our infrastructure gap to be, but it still can be a sticker shock number sometimes.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, replacing an arena is not in 5 figures. It's in 6 and maybe 7. It's those are horrifically expensive, or who knows what. And when you've got aging infrastructure as well. One of the things I remember talking to Kevin Eccles down in West Grey, who is saying, hey, our bridges, you put these bridges in, we have to replace them, but we don't got the money. Are bridges an issue in Georgian Bluffs as well?
Yes, we've got one, the Emery Bridge, that's being worked on now, should be construction 2026, I think. Another one on concession 3 in the former Derby that was closed. And so we've got to look at how or when do we reopen that one. And the rest of them, like most of these bridges are 50 years older and beyond, and they've outlived their life. And if you think about it, when they were built, horses and buggies went across them. Now we take great big pieces of farm equipment and heavier vehicles than the horse and buggy were, and we expect that structure to continue to hold up, and they're not. They can't.
Not to mention snowplows and gravel trucks.
Yes, exactly. And people don't think of what those structures were built to take and what they're now taking. So, yeah, it's an ongoing issue and one we have to keep focused on. And I think that's where our asset management plan, defining what's the lifespan of these, when do they have to be replaced, and getting a plan in place that allows us to have the funds to do it as we need to.
Mm-hmm.
With an asset management plan, it's also looking at like for like replacement. So if you were using Kemble Community Center, for example, it would only give you the value to replace Kemble Community Center with what you currently have. It doesn't give a value for any modifications you may want around that. Looking at a bridge, if it was a one-lane bridge, asset management is just going to give you an estimated cost to replace it as a one-lane bridge. But if the level of service that you're trying to provide for that area now demands or needs a two-lane bridge, well, that's an additional cost that you wouldn't have seen in your asset management plan for that change in level of service.
Good point. Good point. Or if you wanted to, now we can talk about Georgian Bluffs as the pickleball capital of Canada. If you wanted, I know some of the pickleball players at Kemble. It's a cutthroat game from what I've been told, and there's 150 people playing pickleball at the Kemble Arena. It's
And that's just the ones that I think are part of that group.
right.
There are other people, because we still have our days where it's a drop-in session. So there's other people that prefer not to be part of that bigger group and just go for the drop-in sessions. And in the summertime, that's at Shallow Lake, as well as it's out at the Kilsyth Arena year round, same as Kemble. So it's a sport that people have really grabbed onto. And that was kind of an easy repurpose of the former arenas at Kemble and Kilsyth to facilitate getting the lines marked on the floors and such. They can't be repurposed that easily for every sport.
Right. Yeah. And if I recall correctly, Kilsyth has natural ice. It doesn't have a plant.
Yes, it was built to eventually have a plant. It could have a plant put in, but it is for a natural ice surface.
Right. Well, this winter with all the snow, and the cold, it's probably a pretty good place for our shinny, if nothing else. So.
Except I think it's booked all through the winter for the roller derby group.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Right. So maybe there's some people who are playing hockey have to find a pond somewhere.
They might.
Or another arena.
So the other thing is Kemble is also used for, and I'm just going to say Owenside Minor Baseball. They do their indoor practice out there. So it is all set up for them to use as well. Mm-hmm. So there's different things going on at the different community centers.
And I also believe that with the board replacement that's going on and at the Julie MacArthur here, and the work that has to be done at the Julie MacArthur, they've got the hockey teams, the minor hockey teams practicing all over Grey Bruce. It's there's a lot of changes going on.
That I wasn't aware of, but I see Sam nodding. Sorry, go ahead, Sam.
Oh, no problem. Yes, our Shallow Lake Arena has seen an influx in ice rentals to accommodate some of that, and we're fortunate that we're able to help accommodate some of that.
Right, and it's both necessary, but it also makes good use of regional facilities, so it's a win-win. Yeah. Well, let's move on to some of the things that I'm just looking at the list of stuff that Georgian Bluffs has done, and one of the things that I know that, Sue, you've taken a great pride in are the community events that Shallow Lake has done in the last year, and things like Canada Day, movie nights, special events. What's coming up in the next little while? Oh, she's got to go for a list. Oh my goodness.
I have to go to so the first thing I will be involved in coming up, I'm just looking at the dates on this. Black History Month is coming up in February. So there's going to be an event at Grey Roots from 1 to 4 on Monday, February 17th. So Family Day weekend. There is the Lunar New Year next Saturday, February 8th. Again, out at Grey Roots Museum from 10 to noon. And we're going to have a polar plunge out at Shallow Lake on the 23rd. So Sunday, February 23rd. And that's taking place at the Shallow Lake Arena. Registration at 9:30 and the plunge at 11 a.m. And that's a combined effort of the OPP, Intertownship Fire Department, Grey County paramedics, and township staff are going to take a dive into an icy pool to raise money for Special Olympics. I am not going to be one of those people. I may well sponsor someone. I will not be jumping in.
You took the question right out of my mouth. And just to be clear, the pool, if I recall correctly, is one of the water retention pools that they use for the fire department uses for their pumpers.
Yes.
So it's kind of like they pump the water into this big pool, and then they draw it out instead, and it's a little easier on their pumps to do that that way. All right. Well, here we were anticipating the mayor getting dunked, but not this year.
Not this year. Probably not ever. Just in case somebody thought that was an option. That's not going to happen.
Well, there would be people who would pay good money to see that, Sue.
I'm sure there are. They can pay to see somebody else jump in.
And of course, people can always support their own firefighters and OPP and paramedics who are just crazy enough to do it.
They are. That's right. And it's good. I mean, it's for a worthy cause. Special Olympics, I think, definitely needs the help there. So
absolutely.
I think we're pretty proud to be able to take part in that.
Is anyone from the works department doing it, Sam, or is the town staff participating at all?
I'm not sure I can answer that. I don't know which staff, if there will be staff jumping as well. I know I will not be one of them. I don't mind the cold, but I'm not going to do wet and cold.
No.
It's got to be above 75, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I remember the rule growing up when I was little. The pool had to be above 70 before we could go in.
Right. Well, that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. Now, some of the other things that are happening here in Georgian Bluffs is a new citizen portal, I believe. And a lot of municipalities are going to these portals, and they have a variety of functions that can be done. If you want to see it in action, I guess you can go to the council calendar is a good example of that portal, because it gives you everything you need, including the video links and the post meeting videos. But this is a customer portal. What's that going to do?
You want to take this one, Sam? I've got some notes here, but
Sure. So our citizen portal that we're looking to implement, I'm not sure when the go live date might be, but it will give residents an opportunity to log into their portal and they can see outstanding balances that they may have. So we're going to have an interim tax bill that will be coming out shortly. Our staff just generated and printed them yesterday. So it would give individuals an avenue that they could log into their portal to see outstanding balances. For taxes, many people will request copies of statements. It would give them an opportunity to go and get their statement to know what they paid for property taxes for income tax purposes, instead of having to call us, printing it and sending it to them. It's just another mechanism that they could get that same information, and they would have the opportunity to get it outside of our normal core working hours.
Mm-hmm. Well, having started that little job, which isn't so little, today, myself, I know the importance of all those tax documents. So It sounds like a good consumer initiative. And this also serves as a way to contact both people who, say, the roads department or members of council, does it?
That would be more so through our Contact GB module that we have, which is on our website, where you can submit a question or if they're concerned. So if your road hadn't been done in a long period of time, you can submit a complaint within there, letting staff know what road it might be. Or if you experience a pothole on a road, you can let us know about the pothole, and then we can deploy staff resources as needed to address it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've got to take a break because somebody wants to talk to the viewers. Not me. Well, I do, but you know what I mean. Anyway, Sue and Samantha, we will take a quick break and we'll be right back. Friends, I'm David Shearman. This is Politically Speaking.
This program is brought to you by Rogers Xfinity, connecting you to more of what you love. Visit Rogers.com for more details. You're watching Rogers TV.
We invite you to play What's My Line?
Welcome, Mrs. Baker. Those folks over there need to guess your extraordinary occupation.
Are you an entertainer, Mrs. Baker?
Yes.
Do people come to watch you, perform?
Yes. Do you travel for work? Yes, I do.
Do you ever wear a special type of costume?
Yes.
Is your job, physical?
Yes, indeed.
Are you a member of a team?
Yes.
Are you a professional baseball player?
Yes, I am.
Created during the Second World War, the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League included 68 Canadians. One of its brightest stars was my mother, Saskatchewan's Mary Bonnie Baker, a pioneer for women in sports.
You're watching an interesting local show on Rogers TV and you want to know more. That's when you head to RogersTV.com. Our website provides more information about our programs, our hosts, our schedule, and about how you too can get involved with Rogers TV. Visit us online at RogersTV.com.
Hi, and welcome to Back to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. My guests today are Sue Carleton, who is the mayor of Georgian Bluffs, and Samantha Buchanan, who is the treasurer of Georgian Bluffs. And are we really talking about dollars and cents with sense, S-E-N-S-E? That was a compliment, Sue, in case you didn't know.
Yes. I think with Georgian Bluffs, I think between council and staff, we're in a good position. And maybe we're fortunate to be a little better financially than others. I think we can still improve.
Yeah. Well, you've just, to continue on where we left off, sort of, besides your citizen portal, you've also launched, you relaunched your website. What are some of the new features of that?
Easier to get around on. I'm just kind of looking at it now. Lots of information there. So if somebody's got a concern about garbage, recycling, and waste, that's all there. And we've had issues with our waste pickup and such. We've got a new contract coming up for that. So that information is there on the new website. It complies with all the accessibility for Ontarians. So that should help it easier for residents who have some issues, some needs that maybe not everyone has, to get the information they need and to navigate around that website. And maybe I'll let Sam speak to the tax calculator tool that's on there now.
Yes. So a new tool that we have on our website is our tax calculator, where you can go and put in what the assessed value of your property is, and it will give you a visual of where is my money going. So if your house was assessed at $300,000, it would tell you exactly how much of that, what you pay for total taxes, is going to fund OPP, to fund library, to fund recreation programs. So it gives you a bit better of a breakdown of where specifically is your money going.
That's an interesting concept because people ask always, well, where's my money going? And just to be clear, the assessed value is what you have on your tax statement. And it's the one that is assessed by impact. And are those still dated 2016? Those assessments are still 2016?
Yes.
Well, we shall see when the... Sorry?
They're still expressed in 2016 dollars. Impact is reviewing, and if there is new assessment, they are sending out the information to municipalities to ensure that those are captured as well. So
you haven't heard anything from Impact about when that might be?
No, and at the recent Roma conference, it was asked, but there wasn't really an answer given again. I don't think anybody knows when that reassessment's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, governments don't like to give us bad news, especially in this particular time of the year and this particular phase of the government. So we shall see what we shall see.
Mm-hmm. So just going back to the website, as an example, the one page is Living Here. And on there, you can get information about animal services, bylaw enforcement, cemeteries, commissioning services, emergency management, our fire and emergency services, garbage and recycling and waste, as I mentioned, invasive species, information for new residents. And I'm noticing that is not in English, so not recognizing what language that is. I'm pleased to see that that's for somebody else to read who doesn't have English as a first language. Information about property taxes, roads, truth and reconciliation, and our water billing. So that's one page. Then you go on from there. So,
gee, if you have insomnia, you can go and surf the churches, search the township's website.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Or if you have a real genuine question, you never know. Georgian Bluffs does not provide marriage services, does it? And marriage licenses?
No.
Not all municipalities do. That's one of those things that's kind of up to the individual municipality's choice, if I'm not mistaken, because I get that question in my line of work from time to time. So it's always helpful to know. You just send it to Owen Sound.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. The other side of this, since we're talking about technology, is I gather you did some updates to the council chambers as well.
We did. So a new microphone system in there that makes it a lot clearer. I don't even know all of the new technology that went in there that I think in a lot of ways makes it easier for staff to do their jobs. And it makes it easier for residents to log on during council meetings and watch the proceedings either live as it's happening or watch it later. And I think that was one of the biggest advantages of COVID-19 is it pushed us all, the majority of us, to that level of a reaction to our residents. And for transparency's sake, I like it. It means people can watch it. They hear exactly what you said. If they question or somebody says, oh, no, I'm sure she said that, they can go back and watch it and listen to it. So I'm pleased with it. We have a lot of people log in and watch every one of those council meetings. So instead of having to come to the township office, you can stay at home and do it either, as I said, live or later, watch the recording.
It's certainly one of the things that has enhanced citizen engagement.
It is. It's allowed more people to be more involved in their local municipal government than before, because most people don't want to come and sit in council chambers for 3 or 4 hours every Wednesday night.
That's why they give you the really nice, comfortable chairs, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's a whole other discussion. But the other thing that I wanted to ask about is short-term accommodation. Where we've talked about this in previous shows, where are you at in the short-term accommodation bylaw process now?
I'm going to turn to Sam on that one because I know we've passed part, but the fees and services amounts or something, there's some piece still has to be done.
Yes. So on the back end staff side, we're still working with a few operators to get our rhythm down on how are we going to actually actively monitor these before going into busy season. So I'm not directly involved in that project, so I don't know its exact status, but I believe we are still working through some of those implementation aspects.
Yeah, my understanding was part of it is the registration process still isn't totally set. So we've passed the bylaw, but it's getting all the little details to it operational in a way that's going to work easily for the operators and for staff who have to monitor it.
I think that most people don't realize that the back end of, as it's called, of these programs is just as, if not more important than what we see as what faces the consumer, the taxpayer, whatever. There's a lot of high technology that goes in behind this, and it's not just hardware, it's mostly software, from what I understand.
That's beyond over me. That's not a level I have to know how staff implement what council directs. That maybe sounds absolutely awful, but that normally is the way it is. We're supposed to stay out of the weeds. That's not our job. What was the one thing I heard recently? It is our job to steer the ship. It is staff's job to row the boat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the captain is on the bridge, but the engineer is in the engine room. Let's push that a little further.
Yeah.
And actually, it's the engineers that help make the boat really go.
Yes.
So, and the navigator too. That's you, Sam. Okay. How much? This is a kind of a weedy thing, but I'll ask the question: how much do you expect to spend on infrastructure maintenance and improvement in 25? Oh, Sam's going for her spreadsheets. I can see that. Good for you. Good stuff.
I'm going to say from the speaking notes that I was given, roads are getting 1.7 million allocated to hardtop surface preservation program. And that's part of a larger plan to gradually increase that program's budget to 2 million per year over the next 5 years. Bridges are getting 5.8 million earmarked over 3 years for design, engineering, and replacement. 1.8 million for parks and recreation for upgrades to playgrounds, enhancements to recreational facilities, beautification of trails, and ensuring residents have access to enjoyable and accessible outdoor spaces. So,
but
Sam may have further numbers to that as well.
Looking at both our roads and our water, what we have planned for capital purposes, it's around $8 million worth of work. And that would include the roads and the bridges work that Mayor Carleton had spoke about, but it's just the 2025 portion of that. For our bridges, they're multi-year projects that we try to include in our budget what we expect to be spent in that year and not reflect all of that cost to work in 1 year.
Do you have a multi-year capital plan?
At this time, no, it is something I am working towards.
Mm-hmm.
And our change in our 2025 budget process is one of those stepping stones in accomplishing that multi-year capital plan and potentially a multi-year operating budget as well.
Mm-hmm. Because some municipalities have multi-year capital plans, and what I find fascinating is that they can predict the life of a piece of capital equipment, like let's say a snowplow. It's 10 years. And so that there are fewer surprises. Not that there's ever no surprises, but there are fewer surprises because you've got to bank $500,000 for that to replace that snowplow. But instead of dumping it in at $500,000 in 1 year, you can break it up over 10 years.
Yes, and that's something our asset management plan will also help inform, that multi-year capital, so we can determine those life cycle costs and start mapping out when those costs may be incurred.
And people would say, well, that's big city stuff. We don't need that in a small municipality. Do we?
We need it. And to a degree, we've done that, knowing that, yes, plows have to be replaced on a 7 to 8 year cycle, something like that. It's been there, but not truly defined, so that we've taken it down. We've done it with the larger pieces of equipment, but not necessarily with some of the smaller pieces that have a life cycle replacement value as well. So it's driving it down really into the nuts and the bolts of every piece of equipment is on that plan.
Now, Sam, I noticed that over your shoulder, you've got a bunch of binders, records, minutes, but part of the plan, I believe, is a records management program, including the digitization of municipal records. What's that all about?
Yes, so records management is becoming something that is very important for municipalities for a plethora of reasons. Over the past couple summers, we have utilized student positions to help with our records management. We did include another student position in our 2025 budget for a summer period to help start tackling that records management. I know our clerk and her staff have been diligently working on trying to digitize as much as we can.
So what would that be? What would those records be? Just not, council minutes comes the first thing that comes to my mind.
Every single piece of paper that comes through these doors, every email that any staff or counselor, those are all considered records of the township that we need to properly have cataloged and available, and each record only has a finite life as to how long we have to keep it. Many businesses, for example, or even individuals, when you look at your tax returns and the records included in that, you're told to keep them for a 7-year period, as that's the period where CRA or whomever could come back and audit you. So it's doing similar tasks like that, but on a township-wide scale.
Can this also be used for things like Freedom of Information Acts, people who want to figure out what happened?
Yes, it would allow for less staff time to gather all that information because it would all be digitized, that it's an easier search to find it. Whereas right now we're having to potentially hunt through banker boxes that have the information to find if there's anything in them.
I hate to say it, but I see a little further in the corner of your office a pile of banker boxes or Rubbermaid bins, so you're still not there.
Yes, those are our year-end audit paperworks.
Oh, it's that time of year, is it?
Yes.
And that's one of the other things I don't think people can appreciate or appreciate much of is that the audit requirements, which I believe are set by the province that you have to comply with, are significant. And I'm sure that's just a portion of the paperwork that you have to organize.
We are at the phase in my year of work, I guess, where I don't know what year I might be working in, if it's last year, this year, or next year.
Well, I asked this of Mayor Body, and I might as well ask it of you. Owen Sound just received a quote clean audit. Is that your gold standard as well, Samantha?
Yes, we do aspire for a clean audit opinion. Our 2023 financial statements, they were qualified on the basis of asset retirement obligation, but otherwise were clean. Asset retirement obligation was a new standard that came into effect for 2023 year ends. And unfortunately, we just didn't have the right information to address it, to ensure that we could financially capture what any asset retirement obligations we may have.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because most organizations I've been a part of that have had required audits, it's been, oh, it's a clean audit. And then you read the footnotes. And in the footnotes, you'll see this is a clean audit, and these are the areas that we want to draw to your attention. But that's interesting that it was a clean audit except for that comment. So, well, hey, just keep at it, I guess. And so this will be what you're working on is the audit for 2024.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Do those boxes ever disappear, or they just get recycled and refilled with 2025 paperwork?
Yeah, we have I think I have 8 boxes because we need to keep 7 years of records, and then we have our current year that we just rotate through the information, and we find it's a lot easier to hand our auditor, here is your banker box with all of the information you may need.
So it's kind of like the individual's tax return.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Here's everything you need, Canada Revenue or tax preparer. Yep. But it's just a slightly different goal and a slightly different purpose. When does that get reported?
It fluctuates when our financial statements are presented. Typically, it is around the June mark.
Okay.
I think we've had a couple of years where it's been slightly earlier, and then a few years where it's been slightly later than that June mark.
And the auditor is whom?
We use MNP.
Which is the new name for BDO. BDO sold their rural Ontario clients to MNP, as I recall.
That is correct.
So, yeah. My producer is just saying, just wait. Just wait. It could be messy. I do know a few people who work at used to work at BDO, now at MNP, and they're still on track. They're still, getting things together. But hey, we'll see what happens. It could be interesting as us on the customer end, or you on the customer end. Something to keep an eye open for.
I'm fortunate that I came from BDO.
Oh, so, did you? Okay.
Yes, so I was very familiar with their processes. So
yeah. Well, we shall see what happens. Now, I have to ask you: did you snicker when it got your friends got bought out and they all have a new boss, or are you glad that you're here where you are, Samantha?
From what I hear, it's a lot of the same people, just a new name. So
right.
They're trying to keep services the same.
Right. And actually, that's an advantage for someone in your position, that you know the auditor, you know their position. It's not, you're not dealing with strangers, and they tend to be the same people year after year, do they not?
Yes, our partner and senior staff typically remain the same. They may rotate in some new junior staff throughout, but that's to be expected. Every new accountant, they need to learn somehow. So.
Just as you did. But I think the other thing is that is useful to remember is this is not just, audits don't exist just to make sure that the treasurer is doing their job. It's a form of protection for citizens.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way of saying this is how your money is being spent.
Absolutely.
This is how, this is where. Yeah.
Well, we've got about 4 minutes left, and I wanted to ask you, what's coming up in the next couple of months in Georgian Bluffs that you want to talk about? aside from snow, we know that's coming. It's snowing as we speak.
The sun's shining where I am. But then Monday, when it was bad for everybody else, the sun was shining here. Don't know that I can actually pinpoint exactly what we've got coming that's special. I mean, there's more events being planned for the summer months. There's just the continuing work in the municipality. I'm trying to think of what reports we're supposed to be getting back in February, and I'm drawing a blank.
Well, did you get to Roma?
I did.
And what was there anything significant that came out of Roma for Georgian Bluffs?
Not significantly. Some of the changes, like the Rural Economic Development Program, has gone from 5 million to 10 million. And I think they're now calling it Rural Ontario Development. That was one I remember. I landed up going to the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative for some funding announcements that they were doing with Conservation of Ontario, which is doing some shoreline resilience and researching into that. And Maitland, Niagara, and Thunder Bay Conservation Authorities were selected for that. But Grey Sabel and Nottawasaga are going to piggyback on that and do some work along the shoreline. So that'll be shoreline of Georgian Bluffs, Meaford, and across to Town of Blue Mountains. So there was some things like that. I missed the whole wastewater information session. So I'm waiting for the recordings and everything to come out so I can listen to that later. Mm-hmm. It was a good conference. I have to say, I really enjoyed this one. I enjoyed the sessions. Quite a bit of focus on Indigenous relations and listening to them give us ideas on how we can work with them. I think that's important. We need to know how to work with our neighbors, what they need, be able to communicate what we need. And I'm pleased to see things like that going on, those agendas. Another one was about basically protecting your employees from whether it be residents or people outside the organization who are harassing them, and making sure that employees have a safe place to work.
Yep.
So there were some really, really interesting sessions to take in. And as I say, this is one of the ones I enjoyed the most. I've gone to others and come back thinking, I don't know why I was really there, but this one I really got a lot out of.
And with that, I have to say thank you to both of you because our time is up. Sue, Samantha, great to have you here, and always good to hear what's happening in Georgian Bluffs. And to you, my friends who are watching, thank you. And yes, we'll talk again.
Thank you, David.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
Public transit, garbage pickup, parks and recreation programs, snow removal on your street. How can you stay informed about these and other important local services? Tune to City Council coverage on Rogers TV. See your community leaders at work on Rogers TV City Council coverage.
For me, it all started here.
I do my best work here.
Scores! Oh my
goodness.
This guy's dangerous from here, here, and here.